An economist, professor of real estate, and visiting scholar at the San Francisco Federal Reserve, Professor Christopher Palmer uses maps, data, and econometrics to uncover unexpected housing market trends and probe the story behind community change. Please give a big welcome to Christopher Palmer.
Markets hate uncertainty. Not a bad segue from our last talk. You hear this if you see the financial news. You hear this all the time. It's an explanation for what happens and why the market went up, down, or sideways. Market went up after bad news. Well, one explanation is markets hate uncertainty and they're happy this uncertainty is resolved. Or what do the talking heads say when the market went down and there's no other explanation in arm's length? Well, they'll say markets hate uncertainty. When I was studying for my PhD, I discovered that nearly thousands and thousands of articles have been written by economists about choice under uncertainty. And you know this. I'm here to tell you that on an intuitive level, you as real estate professionals understand uncertainty and what it does and what its effects are on an intuitive level better than most. And you're also equipped to deal with it and to thrive in those situations. You don't have to look far for the sources of uncertainty today, for the major sources. So here we have Brexit. Here's another major source of uncertainty, Trump. These kind of political uncertainty, macroeconomic uncertainty, security uncertainty, social unrest, these have a major effect in our marketplace. There's some major macroeconomic things that we're always reading about and we're always trying to figure out how is this going to affect me, how's it going to affect my bottom line? What's going to happen with the debt ceiling? We have that crisis every now and then. What's going to happen with oil prices? Will my currency lose value overnight? So those of us that live and work in gateway markets know that there are a lot of foreigners who would much rather have their money invested in American real estate, and until recently London real estate, than they would in their own checking accounts, in their own saving accounts, in their own currency. Here's another one that's very near and dear to the hearts of real estate professionals, interest rates. What's going to happen with interest rates? When they're high, are they going to stay high? Are they going to decrease? Should we wait and see? So what exactly is the problem with uncertainty? Well, it induces commitment problems. Maybe you've dated someone like this. Maybe you have been this person that has commitment problems. I call it the wait and see approach. Think through the psyche of a first-time home buyer. Well, they're facing a buy versus rent decision. They're also facing what we call a first-time or a household formation decision, which is about the least sexy way you could possibly put that particular decision. I've said a lot of bad lines in my life, but I don't think I've ever said, hey baby, you want to do some household formation with me and become first-time home buyer with me? That decision that they're facing, they can wait and see. They can let it ride and let it wait and see how things pan out. Someone that's thinking about trading up and they're probably not in a horrible situation right now, when there's an increase in uncertainty and they're not exactly sure what's on the horizon, they might just wait out that decision a little bit. How about a second home buyer that's thinking about, do I want to have that vacation home? Do I want to have that extra option on my vacation? Or maybe not this year. Maybe I want to wait and see how that pans out. So of all the drivers that we talked about in macroeconomic uncertainty, Brexit, for example, and if you want a case study in real estate and uncertainty, Google Brexit real estate and learn how everything in the UK property market hit the fan right after the vote. Add to that each family's microeconomic uncertainty. We talked about macroeconomic uncertainty. What's the microeconomic uncertainty? Well, am I going to get this promotion? Are we going to have kids? Are we going to have more kids? Is my aging parent going to have to come and live with us? What is my future income going to look like? My wife and I are thinking right now, are our 3 little kids and us, are we going to outgrow this house? Are we going to have an opportunity to trade up in the future? Or what kind of mortgage do we want to get right now if we do a refinance? Because how long are we going to be in our particular house right now? So you layer onto all of that this microeconomic uncertainty. A lot of us are here as real estate professionals. A lot of us are also here as business owners, and you face this uncertainty all the time. You face the uncertainty of trying to disrupt an industry, or desperately trying to make sure that you are not disrupted. So as you think about the uncertainty, what are the rules that the game is going to be played by in the future? You know this, you live this. Let me do a little bit of a deep dive in one source of uncertainty, and we'll talk about how it plays out in real estate and how you could deal with this. So this map is from some research that I've done and other people have done, looking at what areas of the country have been most impacted by globalization. Now, make no mistake about it, I am a fan of free trade. I am a fan of globalization. The total benefits clearly outweigh the total costs of free trade and of globalization. However, those costs are concentrated. The burden is not shared, whereas we all benefit from, say, lower prices from free trade. We don't all necessarily bear the brunt of what happens when you do globalization. So that's what this map shows. The dark areas, the red areas on this map, are where people work in industries that were most affected by import competition from China. So they're making the things that are now made by China, and things are going upside down in these areas. What's happening? What does this have to do with real estate? Well, layoffs are happening in these areas. Unemployment rate is rising a little bit. Wages are falling, and my research shows that not only are they falling on average in these red areas, these hardest hit areas, they're falling even more for low-paying jobs, low-skill jobs in these areas. They're the hardest hit in these areas. There's also political turmoil happening in these places. So they're more likely to vote out the incumbent. Get this guy out of here. Things aren't going well. And what does this have to do with real estate? They're also more likely to miss a mortgage payment in these areas. So what does that mean? You can imagine that if you're in one of these hardest hit areas, the buyers and the sellers in here are going to be in a wait and see approach. Things are going down. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. Is it going to stabilize? Is it going to rebound? I'm not sure what to do, and so I'm going to wait and see. Let me show you another map. This is a map of somebody's Facebook friends, somebody that lives in Los Angeles. And you can see here they have a bunch of friends in and around LA, but they also have a big exposure in the Northeast in the Philadelphia area. Okay, so just think through that for a second. This is just one random person. Here's another random person from Los Angeles, has a high exposure to Utah, where my little sister just moved. And so think about the sources of uncertainty, that their perceptions of uncertainty is going to be colored differently based on their exposure to Utah or the other exposure to Philadelphia. And here's one more for you. Here's a Minneapolis exposure. Again, somebody from LA thinking about the LA market, but their perceptions are also going to be colored by what? By Minneapolis. They're not going to be colored by Philadelphia. They know practically nobody there. But they are going to be colored by Minneapolis and not Utah and not San Francisco and not Seattle and not Oklahoma. So what does this mean for real estate? Well, in a study that, by the way, you could have seen covered on Inman News, some researchers showed that your friend network matters for your home buying activity. If you have most of your friends in a hot housing market, you are 5% more likely to buy a home in the next couple years. So your information is sourced from your network, not only your social network. That's just a nice proxy for where you get your information from and what areas of the country you're exposed to. So what does that mean for each of us? It means that the perceptions of real estate riskiness that we confront and that we face are driven in part by objective facts about the local market and firsthand observations, and in part by our friends and our family and our people that may live across the country or across the world. So an important takeaway here is, as we deal with uncertainty, as we deal with the effects of globalization, for example, we need to have a good sense of where our data comes from. We need to check our sources. And so you might live in a hard-hit area. You might also not live in a hard-hit area, but your decision or your client's decision is being driven in part by what they know about Oklahoma or Tennessee or Maine or Utah. Can commitment problems be overcome? Maybe some of you are a recovering commitment problem person. Here's something that it was a little thing, seemingly, that made a big difference. I'm going to talk to you about the first-time homebuyer tax credit, which I expect many of you have very fond memories of. Certainly, Senator Isaacson, that was a big proponent of the bill, had very fond memories of the 1975 tax credit when he was a realtor. Thought that was a great idea, and he was very quick to bring it back. Okay, so this was an $8,000 credit. The average house in America is $200,000. This is a 4% discount. I don't know about you, but I don't really jump at signs on a pair of jeans that say 4% off. And yet, look at this graph. Okay, this is from the National Association of Realtors, existing home sales. You know about the boom-bust pattern that you see in the beginning of the graph. No surprise there. And then you see these somewhat violent gyrations, which might have been happy gyrations for you. Where are they happening? They're happening right around the expiration, the planned expiration of these tax credits. So the tax credits were set to expire, and there was a flurry of activity for 4% off. Why would that be? Why would such a little thing make a difference? Well, one thing we know about sellers of real estate, especially residential real estate, is that they're loss averse. People know exactly what they paid for their home, and they'll be darned if they sell it for $1 less than they paid for it, right? So there's this aversion to selling for a loss. They have to sleep with that. They feel like they made a bad decision, and they don't want to do it. They want to squeeze out to at least get out what they paid for it. Never mind that it's been 10 years, that it's been depreciated, that they've enjoyed all of it. During this time period, around these expiration dates, we see the fraction of people that are selling for a loss skyrocket. It happens right when the first-time homebuyer tax credit is most effective. So this basically convinced sellers to get off the fence and make a deal. And why were they willing to make a deal then? Because they knew that buyers were expecting them to make a deal. And buyers were coming in and saying, this is a great time to get off the fence. So the first-time homebuyer tax credit brought together consenting adults for a relatively small price. And so what do we learn from this? Little things can matter. Now, you might have some version of the tax credits in your area. Different states and cities have this. But also, little things like credits and like concessions can make a big difference. Now, the realtors that I've interacted with certainly know this. They're always greasing the wheels and finding a way to smooth things over and say, well, you know what, I'll just replace that door for you that you don't like, and let's just make a deal. Okay, so little things can make a big difference. One more little thing for me to mention is interest rates. Might be a big thing, might be a little thing, but in uncertain times, it can get people off the fence. Let me tell you another little thing that you can mention is silver linings. This is about pitch. This is about framing. So here's a silver lining of being in one of those hard-hit areas. So if you look at what happened to house prices in an area that was especially affected by trade with China, they were much more stable. Okay, so this is the Zillow House Price Index. The blue line is areas that were not impacted by globalization, and the red line is areas that were impacted. So you could say, wow, they just really didn't get the appreciation from the boom, and they kind of missed out. And that might have been a sad story in 2005, 2006. But then by 2009, actually looks like a pretty stable, safe bet to be in one of these places. So there's a silver lining that you're probably adept at doing because you have paid attention to how the National Association of Realtors does this, okay? House prices are going up. Great investment opportunity. Get in now. House prices are going up. You're going to see some appreciation. House prices are going down. Affordability is increasing. What a great time to buy a house when you can take advantage of affordability, right? So these kind of spins are very useful in thinking about, well, what's the silver lining that can help me get over the hump of some inertia? One more thing that can be useful to do is to stress test ourselves. Okay, so the Dodd-Frank Act makes banks stress test themselves under the watchful eye of the Fed, and this is something that I teach and research about a lot, is banking. Okay, so what do they have to do during this? What does it mean to stress test yourself? Well, the bank basically kicks its own tires. The bank sits back and takes all of their balance sheet and all of their accounts, and they say, what would happen to us if house prices fell? What would happen to us if unemployment rate went from upper 4s to, say, low 7s? What would happen to our book of business? What would happen to our loan portfolio? What would happen to our deposits? What kind of financial state are we likely to be in? Could we handle this kind of an adverse situation? We can do that in our own lives. It's very, very useful for us to think through what is the situations that we might face in the future. Think about those contingencies. Think about those scenarios. Think about my family balance sheet or my business's balance sheet. How close to the edge am I? How risky is my income stream? What if house prices fell? Would I be fine? Oh, maybe I would be fine. What if I lost my job? What would be my exit strategy? How likely am I to lose my job? How close to solvency would I be in the following situations? Would my business suffer if there was a national recession? Would my business suffer if there was a tech bubble that burst? As you think through these scenarios, a couple things might happen. You will get clarity, you'll get confidence, and it's a reality check. You might not make some decisions because you realize you wouldn't really be positioned to weather the storm if you made that decision. Or you might realize, hey, I got this. I can handle this. This following situation is actually not so scary to me. It sounded scary, but when I actually worked through what would happen to my cash flow, or what would happen to my business, or what would happen to my ability to make my mortgage payments, it's not so bad. So just like banks stress themselves, we can stress test ourselves. And we can encourage our clients to stress test themselves as well. This reality check gives us fortitude. So let me sum up. You are biased. I am biased. We're all biased. Some of that comes from just the fact that we might have a particular color that we bring or a particular lens that we bring to a situation based on our network, based on the people that we interact with. So a key thing that we can do is to provide objective information. Validate the gut feelings, wherever they come from, of the people that we're working with, but provide with it some objective information that might be better or worse than the perceptions they have. And there's value that's created when we can bring that information to the table. Little things can help overcome inertia. A 4% discount seemed to have made a big difference during the first-time homebuyer tax credit. Interest rates, which incidentally is a lever that the Fed pulls, they decrease interest rates when times are uncertain because they're trying to motivate people to get off of the fence and to play ball. So little things like pointing out that interest rates are a great opportunity. That said, we're all kind of burned out in hearing that interest rates are at historic lows. Little things can overcome inertia, and there's lots of ways that you already grease the wheels. Find the silver linings to turmoil. So that could be that house prices in hardest hit areas are very stable. There wasn't a lot to be exuberant about, and so that means there wasn't a lot to crash. Stress testing will give us confidence and clarity. It will give us a reality check, and it will help us figure out exactly what kind of a situation we're in. And finally, all of this, wrap this up, what does that mean? Opportunistic people with fortitude can thrive in uncertain times. I encourage you to seize those moments. Thank you.